Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today. And since we're on Kavanaugh Ford Eve, we're going to take a break from those stories for a little bit. Just one martini on that today. I'm sure we'll be talking about it a lot on Thursday and Friday. Jim, our good martini takes us to your original home state of New Jersey, and Real Clear Politics pointing out that what should have been a slam dunk Senate race for Democrats is not a slam dunk Senate race for Democrats. Now, to be sure, Bob Menendez, the Democratic senator, is ahead in virtually every poll, if not every poll. The Real Clear Politics average has him ahead by over 8 points, but the number is 41-33, which shows a lot of people have no idea what they want to do. But there's also a story at Real Clear Politics today that from Adele Malpass, who points out that the New Jersey Senate race was supposed to be a done deal with incumbent Bob Menendez easily cruising to re-election. It's rated solid or likely to remain Democratic by most election watchers, and the Democrats were certainly putting it in their win column as they mapped out plans to retake the Senate. But someone forgot to tell New Jersey voters that this race was uncompetitive. The polls show it to be tight. Menendez simply has not shaken Republican challenger Bob Hugin in a state Hillary Clinton carried by 14 points over Donald Trump 2 years ago. Part of the reason seems to be that, despite the federal corruption case against him ending in a mistrial, Menendez has not escaped the taint that came with his 2015 trial. Another is that Hugin, the wealthy former CEO of a biopharmaceutical company, had already spent nearly $16 million in the race. Throw into this mix a state with the worst affordability index in the country and an expected increase in the gasoline tax on October 1st, on top of significant increases in state taxes enacted this spring. It seems a combustible mix in which an attractive and well-funded outsider with a sterling resume can give the political establishment heartburn. And, of course, Menendez has a lot of baggage here. So Hugin's not exactly what you would call a rock-ribbed conservative, Jim. He's pretty moderate on a lot of things. He's pro-choice, for example, and he's not one that's going to be siding with Rand Paul and Ted Cruz a whole lot, assuming Ted Cruz can actually get reelected. But the fact that the Democrats have to sweat this out a little bit, maybe devote some resources to this, and who knows what can happen with all these taxes piling up in Jersey. Maybe, just maybe, the Republicans can hang on to the Senate in part by pulling a massive upset in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I think you can safely say that if Menendez loses, the Democrat hopes for taking the Senate pretty much fall apart. This is one that they've felt like they've had in their back pocket for a while. Now, look, if you're a longtime listener, you're probably like, Jim, Greg, I've heard the story that this is the year New Jersey Republicans come back almost as many times as I've heard this is the year Texas Democrats come back.
Fair enough.
But there's a difference here because Republicans won the governorship in 2009 and then 4 years later in 2013 behind Chris Christie. And the description you put together there, high taxes, high cost of living, sense of corruption, et cetera, that is the political environment that when John Corzine managed to be the first Democrat to lose a statewide race in the state of New Jersey in probably about a decade or so, maybe 2 decades back then. That's a potent set of circumstances. And let's face it, on the one hand, you could say, it's New Jersey. They're used to corruption. It's the home state of the Sopranos. Look at Bob Torricelli. Look at Jim McGreevey, et cetera, et cetera. I used to joke, with good reason, that to the New Jersey Democrats, the opposition party is not Republicans. It's the FBI. That having been said, look, you'd really rather not run for re-elections after having been indicted for bribery, fraud, and making false statements. Yes, it was a mistrial. I thought it was very interesting the day after it happened, the way Menendez treated it like it was total exoneration. I believe in his first speech, he said something like, I'm going to go after my political enemies now or something. I mean, this was not the, hey, I regret my mistakes, lessons learned. I'm a better person from all this. No. It was a mistrial, but there might be a set of circumstances in which New Jersey Democrats are just frustrated enough that this is not a guy who they really want to go out for the mattresses for. If you're a Democrat and you're at 41% in New Jersey in that last poll, that is a certain reason to be a little bit nervous. Now, does this mean he's going to lose? No, you can't say it's a slam dunk and all that kind of stuff. But it is good news for Republicans, and in a time when they've had so many polls going against them, and the mood of the country is bad, it's very tough to run against the traditional midterm environment, et cetera, this is a pleasant surprise and one worth watching as we get closer to Election Day.
Yeah, and just looking at the Real Clear Politics numbers again, that 8.3 average lead for Menendez in the polls includes polls that go all the way back to the spring. So there's really only been one here since early July, and that one was Quinnipiac, and that had Menendez plus 6, 43-37. So definitely still in a dogfight there.
Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Yes.
But nonetheless, if you're a well-funded Republican challenger, this is the kind of environment you want to get. You want to get a little bit of wind, so to speak, and hopefully you can pull out a upset victory on Election Day.
Yes, absolutely. I'm guessing the 2010 midterms or 2014 might have been a slightly better environment to pull the upset here, but we'll see. All right, speaking of midterms, let's move over to the bad martini now, and for that we go to PJ Media and West Virginia with a fascinating decision here. At least that's one word for it. For the first time in our nation's history, voters in 24 counties in West Virginia will be able to vote using their mobile phones. While some are hailing the decision because it will make voting easier for members of the military deployed overseas, experts are warning of possible security breaches. Quote, after researching previously available options, the Secretary's team identified that most electronic ballot delivery technology required access to a desktop computer, printer, and scanner, all of which present significant barriers to overseas voters, especially those in combat zones or engaged in covert operations. According to the West Virginia Secretary of State's office, the state is partnering with a Boston, Massachusetts-based company called VOATS, I think, Incorporated. They did a little bit of a test run during the May primary and found that things were secure. It's got a blockchain technology that allows the information to be stored. This is what they think is the way of the future here. But of course, it says here the state of West Virginia admits there are substantial security concerns, but explain that the VOATS will be utilizing federal standards for software development, regular maintenance and security upgrades, in-depth penetration testing, source code auditing, and audits of the system's cloud infrastructure. After surpassing those requirements, the pilot moved forward, and PJ Media says, wait a minute, federal standards? That alone should raise red flags. A report from Thales East Security points out that 71% of federal agencies have experienced data breaches. So, Jim, what do you make of this?
So I'm glad that the test run worked out so well. 6 different counties. Also, I was pleasantly intrigued to read that they have optical scan and biometric facial recognition software and thumbprint safeguards to ensure the identity of the voter. That sounds like a pretty darn big deal. I'm less worried about this particular case. And again, if you want to make this as an option for somebody who's serving overseas or something like that, it makes a little bit more sense. The bigger thing is my suspicion is less what happens here than when this succeeds, and every state and every county wants to offer some variation of it, and whether they all go with this. Because one, you and I have also pointed out that the argument, voting is too hard. We talked about the millennials who didn't know where to get a stamp and thus could not turn in their mail-in absentee ballot. Look, it's not like they're hiding the post offices from you. This isn't Where's Waldo. They're pretty clear. They don't move around. They stay in one place. This might work out just fine. My suspicion is I have come around to the argument that it is good to have a paper trail for a ballot. It is much tougher to muck around with things when you have the paper ballot that you fill out and it's not, can't get hacked. Nobody can get in and alter the vote results or something like that. And I thought this was the lesson of 2000 recount. I mean, yes, we understood the dimple chat and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to have the safest and most secure options you do, getting it so that everybody can put it on their cell phone strikes me as a bit unnerving. Now, again, the facial recognition sounds good. The thumbprint sounds good. But I just have this feeling that once you open this door, you're going to see heading more and more in this direction. And the whole idea that, I'm open to a broad basis for absentee ballots. You never know when you're going to have Cousin Louie is in the hospital or suddenly, you win a vacation or work has you working late or, at one reason or another. Okay, fine. Let's make it as easy as possible for people to vote, to get to either vote early, vote absentee. But voting through your phone, Greg, this is not American Idol, okay? I mean, Americans might be more concerned if there was hacking going on in the American Idol results. I mean, that would be, getting the people up in arms. But yeah, I don't quite understand how you can float around these theories that Russia hacked the vote and all that kind of stuff, and at the same time say, hey, great news, we're going to be able to vote by phone. To me, you want to make the process, if not as arduous as possible, then as difficult to participate in fraudulently or alter as possible. And as much as probably everybody in West Virginia has the very best of intentions and want to make it as easy as possible for people living abroad or people serving overseas or something like that, make it as easy as possible for them to vote, I see bad things coming down the road if we keep down this path.
Yeah, the security is certainly a major aspect of this. And then there's also the privacy aspect, because I heard someone say recently that the voting booth was the last honest place in America. And who knows what type of pressure you might get from family members or friends or whenever you decide to vote, as opposed to what you would do if you were in that booth all by yourself. All right, Jim, let's move to our crazy martini now. And just yesterday, we had the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, thundering on the Senate floor, as much as Mitch McConnell can thunder. But he's not done. He's not done going after the Democratic arguments here, because one of the things the Democrats have been talking about for a long time, although they've moved on from it a bit, is the need for a full FBI investigation into these claims made by Dr. Christine Ford. We heard it from virtually every member of the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee, certainly from Chuck Schumer. We even heard it from people who used to be in government, like, former Vice President Joe Biden. This was just last week on the Today Show. We're talking with Craig Melvin of NBC News.
How would you suggest that the Senate handle these allegations?
I think they should do an FBI investigation. We did that for Anita Hill. It took 2 days.
No, we should do an FBI investigation. Well, Mitch McConnell found this. Joe Biden with a very different opinion on the matter while he was chairing the Senate Judiciary Committee during the Clarence Thomas confirmation process.
The next person that refers to an FBI report as being worth anything obviously doesn't understand anything. FBI explicitly does not, in this or any other case, reach a conclusion. Period. So, Judge, there's no reason why you should know this. The reason why we cannot rely on the FBI report, you wouldn't like it if we did, because it is inconclusive. They say he said, she said, and they said. Period. So when people wave an FBI report before you, understand, they do not reach conclusions. They do not make, as my friend points out more adequate, they do not make recommendations.
So Joe Biden archival footage is always fun. It was just 2 years ago, Jim, that he was, of course, blasting Republicans for not considering Merrick Garland. And then folks found his C-SPAN floor speech in 1992 demanding that if there is a Supreme Court vacancy come June of that year, that George H.W. Bush should not be given the chance to confirm a nominee that year. So Joe Biden and hypocrisy, we've got a long history here.
I just am looking forward, Greg, to the debate between old Joe Biden and new Joe Biden. It'll be a very entertaining debate because both of them are very entertaining guys. I just keep waiting for, current Joe Biden to look back to old Joe Biden and say, boy, that guy didn't know what the heck he was talking about, which could very well be the case. What old Joe Biden is saying is kind of at the point here, which is that so everyone's, we need an FBI investigation. Well, first of all, making a statement to the FBI and making a statement to the Senate Judiciary Committee are both offered under oath and under penalty of perjury, right? So you the consequences for lying to either one of them are severe. So I don't think you can say, somebody might be lying to the Senate Judiciary Committee, but they wouldn't lie to the FBI. I don't think that carries any weight. The second thing is that the FBI, it's not like that. As I mentioned, we don't have the house for the alleged activities in high school. I guess we might have the location for the alleged incident in college. It's not like they can go and dust for prints. It's not like there's going to be DNA evidence. It's not like there's going to be some sort of great CSI technology that's going to suddenly uncover some pivotal and decisive new evidence. The only thing they can do is basically take statements from the witnesses or the people who are alleged to be there. There's no reason I see for them to think that any of their statements to the FBI are going to be different from the statements they have submitted, once again, under oath, under penalty of perjury, to the committee. So they could do that. It would take 3 or 4 days. And of course, we've had numerous delays in this process. It won't actually change anything. So this looks more and more like another typical delaying tactic. Again, it's been really interesting to see how much the argument of some folks on the anti-Kavanaugh side have been predicated and based upon people not understanding how these processes work. And I don't know about you, Greg, it feels like no matter how many times you explain it, it does not permeate. And they just basically insist, FBI investigation. If somehow, Mulder and Scully are going to find some sort of, a VHS videotape from back then that proves everything or something like that.
Jim, today was plenty crazy, but I have a feeling tomorrow's going to be even crazier. Talk to you then.
I'm not even going to make a thank God it's Friday joke, Greg. See you tomorrow.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and tune in again tomorrow for the next 3 Martini Lunch.